G'day ladies and gents, and welcome to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome aboard the BF-109E7, one of the newest aircraft that was made available from the Thunder League. Today's video, however, is not about the E7. Today we're going to talk about energy fighting. Now, an energy fighting tutorial has been often requested. It's one that I've been very cautious about approaching because there's a lot to it. Today we're only going to deal in the basics of energy fighting. Give you a good, firm understanding of how it actually works for those who don't understand. Now, those who do know how energy fighting works, I'm sure are going to point out there's going to be a lot of things that I'm going to miss. This is deliberate. There are entire flight schools that devote themselves with courses that can last for months, even years, to teaching pilots on how to deal with energy fighting. I have 8 minutes. I can't cover everything. It's just going to be the basics. A firm understanding of the basics, however, will help you operate in War Thunder. Now, first things first, and I'm going to give you just a moment to have a think about your answer before I continue with this one. What is an energy fighter? Got your answer? The answer is every single aircraft you have ever flown that was designed to combat other aircraft in War Thunder. All fighters are energy fighters. Boom and zoom and turn fighting are simply disciplines of energy fighting, very specific ways of handling your energy in combat that are very particular to certain aircraft that are designed to fly in that manner. Once you understand energy fighting at its core, you can apply it to any aircraft regardless of what discipline it follows. So, another question. You have two aircraft. One is at 10,000 feet, moving at 300 kilometers an hour. One is at 8,000 feet, moving at 600 kilometers an hour. Which aircraft has more energy? Got your answer? Now, the majority of pilots would turn around and say the aircraft at higher altitude, because it's at higher altitude. The true answer is it depends. In its most basic level, energy is held in two forms, potential energy and actual energy. Potential energy is best described as altitude. The higher you are, the more potential energy you have. Actual energy is airspeed, how fast your aircraft is moving through the air. Converting between the two, an aircraft moving at high speed, putting itself into a climb, converts actual energy into potential energy and holds it. An aircraft at altitude going into a dive converts potential energy into actual energy, transferring that altitude into speed. So, back to our two hypothetical planes. If aircraft A, at 10,000 feet moving at 300 kilometers an hour, can put itself into a dive to 8,000 feet and only hit 600 kilometers an hour, then both aircraft are actually at the same energy state despite the altitude difference. If it can do better than 300 kilometers an hour, the aircraft at 10,000 feet has more energy. However, if it can only get to 500 kilometers an hour, then even though that plane has an altitude advantage, it is in a lower energy state than the aircraft moving at 600 kilometers an hour, 2,000 feet below it. Yes, it's entirely possible for an aircraft at lower altitude to be in a higher energy state than an aircraft at a higher altitude. Now, what I've just explained is entirely true for all aircraft, but now we get into something that's a little bit more complex: energy conversion and energy retention. Energy conversion is the rate at which an aircraft can transfer potential energy into actual energy. So that one's pretty simple. Then we go into energy retention, and this is where things get really complicated. Energy retention is the rate at which an aircraft can hold actual energy. So after coming out of a dive and going into level flight, how much of that potential speed that it's gained it can maintain once the dive is removed from the equation. Energy retention is also used to describe how much actual energy an aircraft is able to convert back into potential energy during a maneuver. Confused yet? Well, let me make it a little bit worse. Energy conversion obviously controls a dive, as I've described already. Energy conversion can also be used to describe turning actual energy into potential energy in a climb, much like energy retention can as well. However, energy retention can also be used to describe both vertical and horizontal maneuvers. So you've got your level flight, how much speed you can maintain, how much speed you can maintain and convert to potential energy, how much altitude you can gain in a climb, and once you start throwing something like a turn fighter around, how much energy the aircraft can maintain while performing lateral maneuvers. And unlike the basic concepts of energy that I described at the start, all of these change per aircraft based on what the aircraft is designed to do. Alright, this one is probably going to need a visual demonstration, and thankfully we have a volunteer. So our volunteer for the day is Arthur Stormrage. He is flying the F4U Corsair. Now, when we began this fight, I was in a higher energy state than the F4U. The F4U has a higher energy conversion rate in a dive than the E7 does. However, I had more potential energy, being several thousand feet above him, to convert. This allowed me to close the distance and close range on the F4U. However, the F4U has higher horizontal or straight line energy retention. That's energy retention in level flight. So as you can see, I've hit a point now where even though I am maintaining a decent amount of my own energy, I cannot keep up with the F4U. In level flight, it is simply pulling away. Now, while I started this fight at a higher energy state, in this situation, the F4U has now surpassed me on energy. So, I put the plane into a climb. Now, while the F4U has higher level flight energy retention, the E7 trumps it in vertical energy retention. It maintains more of its speed in a vertical maneuver and is able to convert a higher amount of its speed into altitude. Now, while this won't allow me to catch the F4U, what it will allow me to do is to put the aircraft back in a higher energy state. Now, the F4U sees what I'm doing and it tries the same maneuver. However, the F4U, being a heavier aircraft, has much lower energy retention in vertical maneuvers. By attempting to maintain the same maneuver that I did, he's actually put himself in a significantly lower energy state. Even though we're at the same altitude, I have a much higher airspeed. And at this point it comes down to the aircraft's acceleration, or energy generation, which is something I haven't mentioned before. It's pretty simple. The faster your aircraft accelerates in level flight, the faster it is generating energy. Now I'm just going to pause the fight here for just a moment. As you can see, I've been able to rapidly close the distance on the F4U. That was because of that vertical maneuver. It lost so much energy and didn't have the ability to regain it that it has effectively surrendered all advantages to the aircraft behind. So in a matter of just a few seconds of level flight, or very close to level flight, the F4U has gone from having a very slight energy advantage on the E7 to completely surrendering all energy advances. And this is before we've engaged in any form of maneuvering fight. Now, the reason why I want to make a point of this is to shed a little bit of light on the broken and biased flight model comments. A lot of the people that make those, this flight model is broken, Russian bias on this plane, blah blah blah, whatever it happens to be, are people that actually don't understand how energy conversion works. And as a result, they don't understand that the way they're actually flying the aircraft has allowed a situation where the enemy aircraft is able to do something that appears to be impossible. Now, that's not to say that there are no broken flight models in War Thunder. There most certainly are, and I try and point them out when I can. But a lot of the planes that people complain about actually don't have anything wrong with them. It's the way the pilot is flying against them that is causing the problems. I have no doubt that Arthur Stormrage here thought the E7 was a broken pay-to-win aircraft that Gaijin has put into the game. Personally, I think the E7, my few flights with it so far, I don't actually think it's even as good as the E4. I'm actually sort of disappointed with the aircraft at the moment, or at least I haven't had that match that makes me fall in love with the plane yet, like I did with the E4. From his perspective, and judging from the way he took that vertical maneuver, he has limited understanding of how energy works. No offense if you watch this one, Arthur, I hope this sheds a little light on the subject, but from his perspective, he would have seen an E7, an aircraft that is at a lower battle rating than him, rapidly close the distance on his plane, and he was unable to pull away. But what actually happened is, before I closed the distance, when I put the plane into a climb, I was surrendering the pursuit at that point. If he'd continued in level flight, I would never have caught him. He would have pulled out past 7 and 8 kilometers and disappeared. But because he lifted the nose and tried to perform an identical maneuver to my aircraft, in an aircraft that does not have the capability to maintain energy at the way a 109 does, or at least the E7 does in a vertical maneuver, without even realizing it, Arthurus has surrendered all energy advantage to the aircraft that is in pursuit before combat has actually been engaged. He's thrown away the battle nearly a minute before I'm actually going to kill him. And in this particular situation, I consider the F4U to actually be the superior aircraft in this fight, but having the superior aircraft did not prevent him from making a mistake that threw the game. In future, when you encounter an aircraft that performs a maneuver that you cannot quite work out how it did it, a lot of players will go straight to being salty. Before you get to that stage, have a good hard think about how you were flying just before you got shot down, or even anywhere out to a couple of minutes beforehand, and how the aircraft that you were facing was flying. Even have a look at the replays if you really want to work it out. I know this is what I used to do. And have a look at how the two aircraft were reacting to one another, and see if you can see a point where you actually handed an energy advantage to the opposing aircraft and signed your own death warrant anywhere out to a couple of minutes before you were actually shot down. Now, it won't always be the case. Sometimes there will genuinely be something questionable happening, but a lot of the time you will be absolutely shocked at how often you actually set yourself up to get shot down without even realizing you did it. But anyways, let's go back to the fight. So at this point, Arthurus has realized that he can't outrun me, so he's going to try and force the F4U into a maneuvering fight. And this was really the death knell for him at this point. The F-4U is a surprisingly manoeuvrable aircraft when it has energy. However, he's already sacrificed his energy in that vertical climb earlier on. In a desperate attempt to try and both gain energy and increase manoeuvrability at the same time, he's just torn off his combat flaps. And as you can see in the E7, in this situation, I'm not even using combat flaps to maintain a position on his 6. It is quite easy for me to sit behind him with no problems. This is because the E7, along with most early 109s, actually has a very high lateral energy retention. It doesn't lose a lot of speed when it's throwing itself through turns. In fact, in the right situations, it can continue to accelerate. And the end result of this engagement, if you take out the time that I paused the video, happened just short of 2 minutes prior to me actually executing the aircraft. The decision that killed Arthurus was made 2 minutes before he died. And this is absolutely not uncommon in War Thunder. The vast majority of the time, pilots getting shot down within a battle in realistic battles do not realise that they have made a mistake that has allowed them to get themselves killed at the time that they are shot down. They think it is what's going on at that very moment of the dogfight, the intense part when the actual death happens. They don't see that the mistake that they made that allowed that situation to come to pass could have been made minutes beforehand. A choice manoeuvre that was unthought about at the time that actually surrendered an energy advantage to an enemy aircraft, usually the one that killed them. Anyways, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this light tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I hope it opened your eyes. Until next time, thank you for watching. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Fly smart, fly safe, and I'll catch you in the skies.